I'm going to tell you what Washington, D.C. tourism is like right now. Hello, my name is Rob. I'm a tour guide and the founder of TripHacks DC Tours. Normally on this channel, I do tips and advice for visiting Washington, D.C. However, in light of global events, which I'm sure you are aware, I need to take a break from that content for a little while. But in the meantime, I'm still going to have plenty of interesting Washington, D.C. content. So please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, so that you don't miss anything in the future. And if you are interested, I'm going to record a much more in-depth discussion on this topic over on the TripHacks DC podcast. So down in the video description, I will leave links so that you can subscribe in your favorite podcast app and hear it once it's live. Right now, going into April 2020, there is nowhere in the world that is safe to travel. I never imagined that I would ever say those words, and yet, here we are. Life is completely different here now, today, than it was earlier in March. It's a lot different even compared to just a couple weeks ago. Right now, Washington, D.C. is almost entirely closed for business. Almost every single one of the major tourist sites is closed. And we're now under a stay-at-home order by declaration of the mayor. Only businesses that the local government has deemed essential are allowed to continue operating. And tour companies like TripHacks DC are not one of them. Obviously, this means that the museums and the indoor tourist sites like the Capitol Visitor Center and the White House Visitor Center are all closed. So are the outdoor sites like the National Zoo and the gardens at the Smithsonian Castle. And unfortunately, even though the National Cherry Blossom Festival was canceled, so many people showed up at the Tidal Basin anyway that the police and National Guard had to come in and shut it all down. Elsewhere in the city, restaurants and bars are closed. But if they have a kitchen, they are allowed to keep the kitchen open for takeout orders. And I have personally spent some of my money on takeout at my favorite neighborhood restaurants these past few weeks. Others have decided that takeout alone is just not worth it and have completely closed. Which, as a fellow small business owner, I understand is an incredibly difficult decision to make. The Washington, D.C. tourism industry is already completely decimated. I know that most people are aware that tourism is seasonal, but a lot of people don't quite understand just how seasonal it truly is, and why the fact that this thing hit us right in the middle of March was absolute worst case scenario as far as timing goes. To give you an idea, let me show you some of my numbers. Obviously, there are 12 months in a year, and this graph shows how much TripHacks DC Tours earns in each of those months as a percentage of total revenue. January and February account for almost nothing, less than 3% of the yearly total revenue. March and April is when things get busy and we really need to start making up for lost time. April alone is the second busiest month of the year. And unfortunately, almost all of our March business and all of our April business has been completely wiped out. So, earlier this week, I made the difficult decision to suspend all TripHacks DC tours indefinitely. Now, I'm not showing these numbers to evoke any kind of sympathy for me. I'm doing it to show just how hard our industry has been hit, because many companies in the tourism industry have graphs very similar to mine, and some are even worse. Tour companies whose business model is providing tours primarily to school field trips do almost all of their business in just 4 months, between March and June. Right now, it's impossible to know when it will be safe for any of us to reopen. And even once it's safe to reopen, we still need people to travel to Washington, D.C., and that is even less uncertain. The reality is that if things don't pick up until after July, a lot of companies will not make it. So, here's the thing. This is normally the part of the video where you would expect me to promote my new Patreon, or GoFundMe, or Venmo tip jar, but I'm not going to do any of that. The reason is because I see pain all over the world. Every day I open my inbox, and I see pleas from local businesses in my own neighborhood who are desperately trying to stay afloat. There are food banks who are almost out of cash, and they're having trouble feeding the hungry. There's a critical shortage of blood right now because people aren't going to blood drives to donate like they used to. So to ask you to buy something for me with everything else that's happening right now just doesn't feel right. I trust that you know how to make the most difference in the world right now with your own dollars. So instead, what I will ask you to do is completely free and will only take you a few minutes at most. First, please give this video a big thumbs up so that I know that you made it this far. Then, go down into the video description and click on the link to sign up for the Trip Hacks DC newsletter. When there is light at the end of this tunnel, I will send an update to everyone on the newsletter list, letting you know the status of Washington, D.C. and of Trip Hacks DC Tours. Even if you're not planning to visit this year, maybe you know someone who is, and once you get the update, you can forward it to them. Because the honest truth is, the only way that we're going to get through this is if people keep traveling to Washington, D.C. and keep signing up for Trip Hacks DC Tours. And lastly, what I'll ask you to do is to leave a comment on this video and let me know what Trip Hacks DC video you've always wanted to see, but for whatever reason, I never made. Or, if you can't think of anything good, just let me know what you're most looking forward to the next time you visit. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there.